Okay, so welcome to Crypt Pulse, the latest episode where we unpack the human stories and cultural strategies that are shaping the brands and redefining their industries. Today we're sitting down with Harsh Shroff, a senior global marketing manager for Nothing, a brand that's disrupting consumer tech through radical simplicity, design and cultural fluency. We'll explore Harsh's personal journey, philosophy behind Nothing's brand, and how they've managed to disrupt an industry dominated by giants, building a brand that feels less like a company and more like a cultural movement. Let's dive in. So, Harsh, good to have you here, mate.
Thank you so much.
So why don't we start with, if you could tell us a little bit about your journey and then what led you to Nothing.
I come from India, and there's a very small town in India. That's where I come from, which is close to Bombay. Like possibly almost every Indian youngster, I wanted to be a cricketer. And I did pursue that passion for a while. For 10 years, I was a professional cricketer. Yeah, and I did lead my district, my school, and played for several teams. But yeah, life had its own way, and then I had to part ways, and that's when I had to decide that, okay, maybe I cannot continue with cricket anymore. I have to make a firm decision, and that's when I decided to take my studies extremely seriously. Before that, it was kind of certain that I'm gonna make it big in sports. Yeah, and then I did my MBA in marketing. I just felt like maybe other things are too technical. Finance, I did BCom, extremely technical. And then I just thought that maybe marketing is something that comes very naturally to me. And it was so naive of me to think about marketing like as just thinking of scripts. And I was just traveling for a game when I was trying to make a decision. On the fly, I was thinking of like advertisements for deodorant ads, and that was kind of hilarious. And I shared it with my friends also, who were taking their careers extremely seriously and looking to get somewhere with engineering or even marketing eventually. And yeah, and we just made, like, we laugh about it now, that was so naive of me to think that that's what marketing is.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I finished my MBA with a heavy heart that shit I couldn't make it in cricket, in sports. But that during that time I went very much towards football, and then played for a couple of amateur clubs in two different cities, and then continued with my very first job that was in Bombay. I was very clear, like, after finishing my MBA, that I didn't want to do sales. Just didn't think like I would fit in really well. Marketing communication kind of seemed like a very good fit. And then at that point in time, there's this agency called as Law and Kenneth, which then got acquired by Saatchi & Saatchi, a big agency, a global name. And yeah, so I started off working in the account management department there as just an entry-level associate. Bang on, like, I mean, straight up, I said that I want to work on big clients. Otherwise, like, the journey that everyone has is you start with like working on small brands and you prove yourself, and then you move up the ladder. And yeah, and I was this annoying kid. Despite of being like in account management, I would constantly be found with the planners and constantly asking them questions. Hey, like, I mean, how did you come up with this insight? What led you to come up with this particular insight? Why are we doing this campaign? So yeah, I'm sure they hate me now as well. Hopefully it's better now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was this enthu kid, and then I was managing only like all the above the line communication, so more of like campaigns which didn't see digital side of things. But yeah, those were large scale campaigns, and for like big brands in India, like Hero MotoCorp, it's not just an India first brand. And then like Skybags, again, like a big brand, and it had like all the leading Bollywood list A stars doing big campaigns, and like you'll see billboards across all the markets. Yeah, and then after spending like 2 years there, I moved on to another agency, and then did like another, like, lots of ATL campaigns, big ones, award-winning campaigns, where one of these brands called Raymond, we did like a very cool campaign on Father's Day, where we saluted single mothers for playing the role of a father. It's been more than 10 years now, but they still show that ad every single time. All the marketing pages, they definitely carry that ad.
And would you say that was one of the moments, maybe alongside a few others, that really shaped your sort of view and your thinking in your career?
Not necessarily. The change kind of happened before that, where I decided that my role cannot be just sending message from the client to my creative team or my planners. Mm-hmm. It has to be more. Before that itself, I started contributing more on like creative side of things, and even like inside side of things, sitting with the planners and jamming with them on like what exactly could be the insights, what are the cultural nuances that we are tapping into, what is the realm for a particular brand what are the different pillars that we can kind of identify for the brand, and then how do we activate those across touch points. And again, this was all from only marketing communication standpoint. I mean, credit to the creative team because it was out and out their baby, and they did a fantastic job. I was just leading the project from like more from account management side of things.
Nice.
So that happened, and then I moved on to like digital marketing side of things, like a different agency which managed a lot of HUL clients. So Magnum Ice Creams, again, a very British oriented brand with like all of its communications very much centered around the British nuances. So I was managing the India side of things, a lot of other HUL brands like Lakme India, and like the same agency that got Netflix account. For the first time when Netflix was coming to India, they did some fantastic campaigns.
Yep.
And I was kind of jealous that why am I not on that brand?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, of course, that was a learning curve for me because managing social media organically, influencer marketing, all of that was extremely new for me because I was out and out an ATL guy. So that was a tough one for me because I was learning a lot, and plus at the same time the expectations were too high. And then I moved on to another agency, and that's where like Digitas, again, it comes under Publicis Group. That's where I was managing brands like Budweiser, and then like the entire portfolio of AB InBev. So there's Budweiser, Corona, and then Beck's Ice. These brands, again, like managing only like a digital side of things. So right from identifying what is their content plan for the month, what are the different digital campaigns that we could do, what are the different personalities that we could activate. And Budweiser, they had a campaign back in the day called Be the King. I think it was also around the World Cup time. And I remember like we set up like a proper war room as well during the World Cup to engage the fans. And there were like different viewing parties across different cities that the client had planned for. Like it's not something that we had planned for, but we were giving them amplification ideas on digital platform. So we set up a war room. Man, like they were a flop.
Yeah.
They were a flop, and how like there was no crowd, and we were just trying to amplify, but we need crowd there on ground to amplify things, but they couldn't pull the crowd.
Interesting, man. And from your experience before, from an agency side of things, what is it that initially drew you to nothing, and how you ended up where you are right now?
I think my experience from ATL to digital to then again moving to another place which had integrated marketing, which I managed a lot of paid media side of things as well. And like literally, I mean, clients, they were super dependent on the agency to kind of like, okay, this is my budget for the year. Can you make a plan for me? How do I activate? So I think, I mean, thank God for that because I got great exposure there of like what it actually means to be on the brand side or on the client side. I mean, honest to God, my aim has always been to be on the brand side and do a marketing role from day one, ever since I started working. It's just that there were no jobs at that point in time. And yeah, and this was a blessing. And then when I moved to nothing, I mean, it's a very, very interesting story, I think, and I would love to thank a friend's roommate who essentially we would just hang out on every Friday, and we all agency folks. And one fine day, like I mean, it's after 2 or 3 years, he just like happened to friend's roommate. Again, we are not in touch at all. He just happened to call me, hey, like I mean, can you guide me with like influencer marketing and like what are the insights, and then hey, like how do you go about it? And I was chatting with him, and this was during the COVID time, and I was also looking for a change. And that's when he said that, hey, like do you know OnePlus's ex co-founder Kalpe? And I was like, who's Kalpe? And then he gave me an introduction about or just like few insights on who he was. And then he's like, he's starting his own brand. Why don't you look them up and see if they're coming to India and what's happening? I was like, okay, let me look them up. The only thing I knew about tech was Apple, Steve Jobs, and yeah, other brands like Samsung and Google, they do exist. I had read Walter Isaacson's Steve Jobs' biography, fantastic book.
Yeah.
And that's all my knowledge was. And I was a big fan of Apple products generally. I remember like saving money and buying the iPod Shuffle. Like what a great piece of tech. And then he just said that, okay, just look them up. And then essentially like I did my research and then found only one person on LinkedIn, and he said that, okay, he's working at nothing. And then I messaged him, and then he's like, okay, just apply via website. I said, okay, cool. I mean, fair. I did that, but I'm not getting a response. And then cut to, he's like, okay, now we've hired an HR after a few days, and then are you still looking out? And like, okay, yeah, I am. And then I had like rounds of interviews, and then like almost with all the co-founders, I was grilled and how. Like, and I remember like I was holidaying during that time, and it was very tough because you stay up till late, you're partying, you're chilling, and then you have an interview at 8 in the morning.
Sometimes it can help.
Yeah, it did help because I was free of all the inhibitions and I just let myself loose.
That's it.
So yeah, cracked all the interviews, and then I started off as a digital marketing manager in India. I was the fifth employee in India, so still a very very small team trying to grow. So at that point in time, I was the digital marketing guy, and the first thing that they asked me is, hey, can you make like local social media strategy? And my strategy was to not have a local presence just yet, and kind of managed to convince the leaders, right now let's build the foundation for a global brand, make the brand solid at a global level, and then move on to starting the local channels. Because like, and I explained, like I had like reasoning for everything, like why would you start your local channels? And then, so you want to do local communication, these are the channels that you can use. You want to leverage the community, Carl comes with great following, and we are never going to match that following if that is the objective. Very soon I studied like a lot of other brands as well, like competition brands, and what I realized is there a lot of their brands, their local channels had more following than the global channels. Just didn't seem right. And then I was also working on like brands before nothing. I was managing Puma. Like, I mean, that's where I had like major learning. I think that was like the point where I learned a lot in my career. Yep. Generally, and I hats off to the clients because they were top notch clients. Like, they knew what they were doing.
It's interesting because you talk about there, you had the conversation with the leadership team around the approach that's going to be taken. Was there anything that you realized that nothing was doing that just kind of separated it out maybe from other tech brands?
Yeah, I think, and if we can bung in the Vision film, the very first Vision film that Nothing put out in year, and like, what a beautiful film. Like I was saying, like my friend told me that, hey, why don't you look up Nothing? And I read everything about them, and then the first thing that I saw was this Vision film and some of the initial Instagram posts where it was all visionary. It gave me goosebumps, and till date it still gives me goosebumps. And I think like it's the best vision film that one of the best vision films that I've ever seen.
Yep.
I was like, I have to jump on the ship. It seems so promising. This company is going to be the next revolution in tech, and the foundations and the thought process seemed so disruptive, seemed so fresh, and like it reminded me of like Walter Isaacson's book on Steve Jobs. It had a lot of similarities.
I think you're right. I think what the approach that Nothing is taking right now is almost what Apple was in the 80s or 70s, right? In terms of its approach to design and its philosophy on products. But it's almost now catered to the modern market and modern audiences of technology enthusiasts. And I think that's a really interesting point maybe we start talking about, which is Nothing's approach to marketing, and off the back of that hero film that it did, and how it now engages with culture, maybe compared to even traditional tech brands.
Yeah, so one solid thing about Nothing is the foundation. And the foundation is not just for marketing alone, but also what the brand believes in and how they see themselves being differentiated from whatever is out there in the market. And then like it's very easy for us to apply that to marketing. And the foundation is all about, hey, like we don't want to be what everyone does. Everyone literally copies the industry leader. If you see, like everything it looks the same. Like whatever Apple designs, everything kind of looks the same. So the foundations were extremely solid, and we set out ourselves to be distinct. Now, what are the different levers that we can be distinct, right? And it is a challenging industry. There's hardware, and then there is software. Now, of all the brands, there's one brand who's managed to bring it together and control everything together. That is Apple. In tech, they say, right, like it's the wall gardens. So with the help of software, you build those wall gardens so high that it's extremely difficult for anyone to jump the ship or try a new brand. And that's what Apple is playing on, all the devices that are connecting so well. So yeah, coming back to the point, like Nothing's roots essentially, like it was all about being distinct and be a European brand, a London-based brand, which is all centered around great design. If you think of tech in today's time, right, or if you ask anyone on the streets, and it's very interesting because recently I went for a research as well in one of the markets, and a consumer said that, hey, like we're still a new brand. I said like, okay, so what if we told you that there's a tech brand coming from London? Would you trust the brand? And they said no, because they've always assumed that tech brands come only from the US or China. So that was an extremely cool insight that, okay, no one knows or like recognizes Europe as the hub for tech. And that's what the company is trying to set out, and with its roots in design, in transparency, and if those are our fundamentals, then the same thing reflects in our marketing communications as well, and it's always distinct, always differentiated. One of the exact examples that I'll give you is the very first approach when I was like, again, like in the India team and global team separately. They are the ones who are making campaigns, and then we have to localize. That was the strategy, and then kind of explore the local route for it, right? How do we tap into different set of cultures and your audiences? And when the global team was defining like what it could mean for nothing as a brand, I had never seen a tech brand romanticize their product with an insect or animal. That was so refreshing. And that was so unique that it felt like, damn, like we've never seen something like this. Like otherwise you always see like smartphone ads or like tech ads, that beautiful renders and like, I mean, yeah, exploded views and 3D rotations and stuff like that. But this one was so fresh, like I've never seen. We've always seen lifestyle shots of like models holding the device and like kind of engaging in a very posy way, almost making it very obvious that, hey, look, I'm using an iPhone or I'm using a Samsung phone. But this one seemed so fresh, where an animal is going through the details, and in the process they not just focused on the details of the product, but also there was a story with the animals, with the insects, that was being told in the campaign. And I'm like, damn, like the attention to detail is so good. And it again, it shows, right from the foundations, where we said that, okay, our product and the transparency, which means the insides of the product has to be like as beautiful as the outside, because that becomes your design language. Which means right from the glue that you choose, or even the materials that you use, all of it has to be so thought through, because that's going to be your design.
Yeah.
And then that transparency and those, like that attention to detail, reflected in every single thing that we did for marketing as well. So I think that was extremely interesting, and the foundations for the brand.
And I think you talked about it before. The foundations are so clear, right? With nothing, we do a lot of work around world building, where if you've got that clear identity of who you stand for, what you stand for as a brand, what your world is, and how you're meant to be turning up, I think that's so clear with nothing. But with that, how much of, I guess, the decision making in terms of your strategy and what you do is based on actual insight versus maybe intuition of what you think is going on?
So there are two things, right? Like I think it's a two-pronged question when it comes to all the marketing decisions, or with, and like throughout the process of, right from like checking if the product is like PMF, the product market fit, to executing your campaign, right? So there are, it's like, I would almost divide this. Developing a product almost comes from like insights of like, okay, where is the industry headed? What do the consumers prefer? Whether like what we've made is liked, disliked. What is it that they don't like? And then like, who is my consumer? And it means like one size doesn't fit everyone. So we have to tailor make our plans depending on which markets we operate in. So all of that is extremely data based, like all the other brands. So there's no room for error there. And all the more because us as a brand, like we don't have deep pockets, we are still new. We have to ensure that we succeed with every single launch that we have. Apple and Samsung can afford to fail. They have those deep pockets. So even if they go off the charts and do something which is not backed by data, by research, they should be absolutely fine. But for us, we have to be extremely sure, extremely like be assertive about the data that, or the insights that we've drawn from research across markets. But then once we come to drawing the campaign and start looking at the creative side of things, of course we do look at a lot of brands. We do look at what our target audience is doing and where the space is heading, but we also apply a brand filter, and that is something which is not backed by any data, but it's something, again, it takes me back to the foundation of the brand. The foundations are so solid, and the people who are holding this foundation together, they are so clear in their minds that you show them a particular piece of content or even like a strategy, they'll immediately say, hey, you know what, like this doesn't seem like nothing. The people also behind this are, they're extremely clear in their minds, like where they see the brand going, what it needs to stand for. But that is extremely, like, what you call, possibly foundation based or intuition based, and we try and showcase things to consumers which is very new, like for example the insects or the animal kingdom with the products. Like if you back that up with data, people will think that, oh, like that is very icky. I don't like the feeling of it. I might not want to touch the product at all. But we explored. We made it look beautiful, and people love it. Like people constantly ask, like we want that back in our campaigns.
I think that juxtaposition between a very technical product, but then, you know, the visual sort of language of using animals and nature is super strong.
Yeah.
I kind of want to talk about that a little bit more, even from a design side of things, and moving back to like what the industry is expected within, you know, audio kit and hardware, and what we've seen, which is like minimalist design, and what Apple and Samsung and other brands have just been churning out for the last 20 years, which has worked and tried and tested. But you know, the approach and the philosophy of the design of the products is so refreshing, and I think it's really catering to a modern tech audience. So I'd love to talk about, you know, a little bit around that, around, you know, the philosophy of Nothing in terms of product design, and how they're approaching, you know, its development and understanding, you know, even around analog, and what that even looks like from your side, because I feel like that's why we're seeing the success of the products, right? Is that it's almost catering, and it feels so different to what's out there right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also stems from the fact that no one else is innovating in hardware design. If you see like Apple, like there's one meme with the uncle holding a shirt,
Yeah.
and it's holding the same shirt. It always comes to life whenever there is a new iPhone launch. What our foundations, again, like our foundations are so clear that we've always wanted to create or bring something which is extremely fresh. And if you speak to our designers as well, the minds behind all of these products, they're extremely inspired by 80s and 90s generation, like in the analog that you mentioned, right? A lot of people draw inspirations from the tech of the past, like the Game Boys and like different tech pieces that we had. But everyone misses that joy now because everything is so advanced. We've kind of lost the soul that a hardware piece would have. If you see last 10 years iPhones or any Apple product, would you save it for life, right? Like, I mean, but if you see like any of these Game Boy, like all the games that we had, it has so much of nostalgia. Those are all keepers. Even if your desk today is filled with all of these nostalgic tech, you would be like thought of as a very different person altogether. You would be considered as cool. And generally in the culture space as well, there's so much of vintage coming back. It's reflecting in fashion, it's reflecting in tech for sure. Even like a lot of album covers that like a lot of artists have now for their launches, all of it is so much coming from nostalgia. So I feel like there is a niche and there is a demand for it. I think Nothing is doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, I think I was having a discussion today with some of the team around like tech glass aesthetic, right? You know, like the adverts from the early 90s or Y2K around Sony Walkmans, or, you know, different tech products from that time. They have that very clean, beautiful art direction behind the ads and even the product launches, which had meaning. They were all unique, and it feels like Nothing has gone back into the archives of that time and leaning into things like nostalgia and, you know, the analog nature of having actual buttons rather than just touch sensitive displays. And I think it's just so refreshing, because actually we're living in a time now where customers want to play with things. They don't want to be part of systems that are closed. They want to mess with it and mess around with themselves and make it their own. And I think Nothing's approach to that is just bang on in terms of what people are looking for.
Very well put. The testament to that is like the recent launch that we had for headphone 1. That's like the first in its category. So it comes with like a lot of tactile buttons that we have, and what you said validates that. People are bored of like making your smartphone as the central device, and like this is quite refreshing, right? Because an app controlling everything does not have a lot of feel to it, as opposed to you using the tactile buttons to even increase the volume, decrease the volume, change the track, or even like shuffle between different modes. So that is quite interesting, and then I think people are loving it so far, whatever we've seen.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about, I guess, like what I've been really impressed with is Nothing's approach to grassroots communities, and I guess like their product launches. They feel closer to, I would say, streetwear drops rather than your traditional tech, you know, launches. How intentional is that, and what's the sort of thinking and the approach that you guys are taking?
Nothing is at the intersection of design, art, and music. These three things, like wherever we have the convergence, like we kind of ensure that the brand is plugged into that. If you see our lifestyle shots as well, there is a desired personality that we think should be who will use a nothing product, and then we try to depict that with our lifestyle shots, with our campaign. And if you see all of these guys, like all the models that we use, the way they are styled, they are extremely themselves. They are very fashion forward, but it's not very luxurious fashion. It's very streetwear fashion. It's very Virgil Abloh kind of fashion. So that's where the brand is, and it is extremely, like, it's a conscious decision from us. Because if you see right now, like our lifestyle shots are pretty much like when you go out for any concert or gig in London, like that's literally the reflection of what our campaigns are all about.
Yeah.
So we kind of depict who is the consumer, and then how they are very much married to the roots of the brand, which is London.
One thing I've noticed as well is just around your, I guess, the ability to tap into to grassroots. And I think that collaborations, creators, and communities is a huge topic and tactic that lots of brands are taking. How is that being used, or how are you working with some of these partners to shape your own strategy?
Of course, community plays a big role when it comes to tech. Having Carl, our CEO, as someone who comes with great following and has a proven track record with his previous stint, I think that really helped us, because we initially, like, we literally transferred whatever his followers were, got transferred to nothing as well, because they were excited that, okay, Carl is starting something. So that really helps. But the second thing that was extremely crucial for us too, how do we engage this community? Because these are all techies. They want things which are very tech first, and a lot of these techies were extremely spec focused. So how do we strike a balance? They might not be as advanced when it comes to the acceptance of the design of our products, but what they are still looking for is hardcore specs. So how do we strike a balance? How do we change their perception about hardware design? Otherwise they are stuck in the rut that, hey, like, I mean, what is the processor, what is the camera like, how many megapixels, what is the OS like? What really helped us is to get them on the journey, and then use Carl as the voice to rally the troops, and then again, like, have those specific activities where you bring them on board constantly, like engage with them. And then again, like I said, the foundation of the brand, right? We are extremely transparent, we are very honest, and that approach is something which no other brand or very few brands have, where they are very honest with its community. When we say that, like, I mean, if you've seen our YouTube channel also, where Carl himself reviews products, he gives his very honest opinion, and he's extremely humble and like okay to accept that, hey, you know what, like, maybe our products are okay. Maybe if you are that consumer, if you can afford that kind of tech, then go for it. Of course, that's a better tech because it's coming at a particular cost.
So that's interesting. You said that you have a almost like an open dialogue with your community. How impactful is that in terms of how you're, I guess, developing your ideas and products and all the rest of it? You know, how involved are you with your audience?
We have a highly engaged community. I mean, of all the industries here, people are extremely vocal if they like or dislike something, and even like with like smallest of the software updates. And at the same time, like, I mean, we have to be extremely proactive in shaping the narrative, learning what they are saying, and then what we do is, like, we take that feedback. We have like feedback forums separately on the community. We hear them, and then the improvements that we make are all based on consumer insights that we get from the community.
Amazing.
And then we are extremely transparent in letting people know if certain things have not been done a particular way, what is the reason behind that. It's a very honest conversation.
And it always feels like everything Nothing does at the moment is very intentional. It's always done with real purpose, and I feel like a lot of brands maybe struggle with that. It seems more of a scattergun approach. So two parts to this question, like, what's the sort of attitude that you guys have around risk and experimentation? And the second thing is, what would maybe be some advice for brands who are looking to be a bit more intentional with their outputs and a bit more strategic? Like, what is it that they could be really thinking about or doing?
I think taking, or the risk appetite for a particular brand, all depends on how much you want to succeed with a particular launch and whether you have the room to even experiment. Like, we've had instances where we couldn't be extremely bold, at least in the initial years. Like, we couldn't experiment a lot. Maybe organically and like doing like, but there were very limited channels. But otherwise, everything had to hit the nail. My recommendation would be that understand what is your risk appetite. If there is any, try and figure out how you can tap into newer audiences, or what is, if you're experimenting with a new way of marketing or doing campaigns, does that hold any interest to your consumers? And then again, like, I mean, no harm in taking a very different route, but like test your waters with like limited set of audience first, almost like an A/B test, see if it's successful, and then get user feedback, and then maybe explore it even more.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that two-way dialogue with your audience, really doubling down into who they are, where they are, and having space for experimentation and learning from them. Because, you know, as you guys have clearly sort of demonstrated, it's a journey, and you can tell very clearly that you guys are telling a story, you know, along the way of your brand, but also how you're bringing people along the journey with you. And I think that's I think we'll leave it there. I think that was a really lovely sort of place to finish it up. So thank you so much, Harsh. I really appreciate the conversation. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much.